that logo. And how is that a tangible? That's not a tangible, although if you think about it, what's the market cap of Coca-Cola? Look at the number of outstanding shares times the dollar amount per share. Multiply that out. That's the market capitalization for the Coca-Cola Corporation. And now you subtract out all of the intangible assets that Coca-Cola has, which, by the way, are not significant compared to its market cap. And the difference is going to be the intangible, but now measurable value of the Coca-Cola brand image. And so we see that there are ways to go about measuring intangibles. Another one here is Walmart's image with Wall Street. What happens to Walmart stock if all of a sudden Walmart has to go through a very public and embarrassing foray with people who bring suit against it for the way it doesn't properly treat its employees or its customers or whatever. That, of course, is fictional, but we have seen such events happen in the past, and the stock takes a major hit. And so the perception on the part of Wall Street and the folks who value the stock has a huge impact on the actual value of Walmart as a corporation. And that goodwill and that good PR, what's that worth? Well, it's worth the difference in the stock price when it's good compared to the stock price when it's bad, which turns out to be billions and billions of dollars. Those are intangible benefits, but there is a way to measure those intangibles. And then factors with an important worth should be central to a business case, even if they aren't easily quantified. Let's look at dangerous myth number 3. Good decisions consider only the facts. People who claim their decisions are made solely on the facts are expressing hope and not reality. What do you think? Is that true? A core skill of senior managers is the ability to make the right decisions in the face of less than factual, for example, intangible information. The only issue then is whether at the time of decision making, the use of intangibles is going to be hidden under the table or brought into the light of day. So, using building blocks to convert intangibles to tangibles. Building block number 1, avoid controversial premises entirely. An example here would be, instead of saying something like, by using this new system, we will lead our industry in innovation. That's a little hard to quantify. That could be viewed by a lot of people as clearly an overstatement. And it might be better instead to use wording like, we will improve our ability to innovate, which will help us achieve a better competitive position in the industry. That would be less controversial. Building block number 2, look for other formulas related to the same benefit area. For example, suppose a formula that calculates the value of customer satisfaction based on increased gross revenue is in the business case. If that's too uncertain, try looking at a formula to calculate savings based on a reduction in customer turnover, computing the higher expense of replacing a lost customer. And if that's not justifiable again, look at how similar systems have impacted other companies. Certainly the vendors that want to sell you these systems will have those kinds of company contacts. Find a company that's as similar to yours as you can with the same sort of impacts that you're expecting and find out what was their measured benefit after implementation. So there's lots of places you can go to find various different estimates for what the dollar value of intangibles is going to be. And that's actually fairly common in all parts of the business. Everybody else in the corporation's been doing that since dirt got invented, and it just seems that IT has an unnormal reticence to participate in that game. Building block number 3, metrics. Be creative at finding sources for information. Interview customers, employees, partners, suppliers, and industry analysts. Search for internet studies and other studies that maybe the vendor could provide you. The reality is that informed guesstimates, not facts, drive much of industry's success. Let's take a minute and look at a CIO's guide to the strengths and weaknesses of ROI calculations. We're going to look at some thoughts about ROI naysayers. We're going to take a look at the future of ROI for senior IT people. Look at some soft side trends for ROI, and then talk about establishing a projects office that will help us with these ROI methodologies. First of all, let's look at what we mean when we say some ROI naysayers. There's no ROI in analyzing the ROI on everything. What do we mean when we say that? Well, it can take a great deal of effort to do an ROI study. I mean, if you add up all the money and time that goes into doing a full-blown ROI analysis, it might be $10,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 to do one of those. Now, that's an investment in making good decisions. It's time and money well spent. If you're thinking of spending $1 million on something, it makes a ton of sense to spend $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to make sure that you're investing that million in the right place. But if you were talking about an IT expenditure of, say, $5,000, where would the sense be in doing an ROI study to figure out whether or not that $5,000 investment made any sense? It wouldn't be. I mean, below some threshold level that will be established in your corporation, spending decisions will just be based on the good judgment of management. And no ROI analysis would be or should be done for expenditures below some minimum level. And then the best, most innovative IT improvements have no ROI. That's a true statement. There's no decent ROI on installing the first weighing word processors in the 70s. People didn't have a way to do that. I mean, all a weighing word processor did was make a typewritten document nicer looking. I mean, that was all they did initially. I lived through those eras. I understood that. I was part of the organizations that scratched their heads and going, why do we want to get word processors? I mean, we have secretaries with typewriters. All we're going to do by getting a word processor is being able to produce a cleaner, nicer looking document. It wasn't until after we'd had word processors for a while that we started getting a feel for all of the benefits that word processing would do for us that a typewriter couldn't do. But those are things we couldn't see up front. Spreadsheets were the same sort of thing. When spreadsheets first came out, they were fun toys, and people were using them for lots of interesting different things, but it wasn't clear what the business value of spreadsheets were. VisiCalc was a type of spreadsheet. ROI models sometimes fail because of complexity. So you can be too simplistic in putting together an ROI model, and you won't have enough data to make an informed decision. But you can make the mistake by going too far in the other direction. You can put together too complex of an ROI study. You have to remember that an ROI justification oftentimes, as we've said, is based on intangibles, and intangibles, as we have said, oftentimes is based on